talk about simplifying the complex with AI is Chris Dilley. He is the field CTO and the chief architect for US state and local government at ServiceNow. Chris, thanks so much for being with us today.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So let's start with some basics. Lay the groundwork for me a little bit. Where is AI being used effectively right now in state and local government?
As we think about kind of the base layer where AI is being used, really the best use case is still the simplest for AI is taking data and understanding how to interpret the inputs, whether it's voice inputs, whether it's text chat inputs, and being able to accelerate how do you answer some of those questions and based on trends, based on the data, are the most effective answer that customer is looking for based on the different context. So when we think about AI, from a call center perspective or from a chat, a lot of, chat bots, people talk about those all the time, but, being able to put AI to respond to that chat bot is really the most effective way to help the citizen, to help the worker, the caseworker, whatever it is, to be able to answer those questions and be able to have those consistent responses to most effectively answer.
Yeah. So as you're kind of describing it, and I appreciate that you went with simple is often the best way to start here because AI can feel a little overwhelming, especially as you start talking generative AI and some of kind of the more complex use cases. So I really appreciate you kind of starting with these basics. I want to stick with those for just a second. What made these cases possible from an implementation or production perspective? Because for a lot of state and local governments, you don't necessarily have a huge team at your disposal. So how did they realize those successes?
Sure. Well, I think there's a couple different ways they realize those successes is, data, the data is what made those use cases possible.
Yeah.
Having that data, being able to utilize that data. And a lot of that is historical data, and a lot of that is data that exists in different documentations or different operating procedures or knowledge bases. So what made these things possible, is the data. What accelerated these things is having technology like what ServiceNow does from a large language model, from an industry language model, and even from a use case, perspective to be able to really focus in on, what it is they're trying to solve. So let me give you a specific example. Um, when a customer is asking, for, where's the nearest location to register their vehicle,
Mm.
those are questions that call centers get, all the time, 100 times a day. Well, now as you're able to understand where that citizen may be, from a mobile phone perspective or from their specific address perspective, to be able to direct them, to specifically where that location is, or even more so they don't have to leave their home to do that. Here's also an answer or where you can do this online to register your vehicle or do some of those things and understanding where they're at in the process. Those are the types of things that as a human, we'd have to ask some of those questions. We'd have to look up some of those things to be able to provide that answer. Using technology, using data sources, using various inputs, AI can help us respond to those things so much faster and actually make the experience much better.
I love that example because who doesn't want to get information faster and easier, right? Like, I don't want to be spending all of my time doing that from an end user perspective or from an employee perspective, going through all the different mechanisms to find the appropriate information. That's a huge time suck. So I really appreciate that. I want to take things up a half step here, though, because there are really complex problems in government, and there are ways that AI can help simplify that, especially for state and local governments. So, first of all, how can AI help solve some of these complex problems? And maybe if you could share an example that could kind of help illustrate this.
Yeah, and the complex problems that I'm gonna, talk about here, people will say, well, what about data? What about privacy?
Mhm.
So for sake of argument, I'm going to table those things
Sure.
because those are things that have to be answered and those are
Mhm.
things that have been overcome. But if we really want to solve big complex problems and how we look at these things, we need to understand data sovereignty. We need to understand where that
Mhm.
data resides, and we understand how technology can utilize that data to make decisions. So to answer your question, one of the biggest challenges right now for so many state and local governments is funding sources.
Yep.
And so as we think about how do we solve complex problems, so imagine AI having the ability to understand, what are all the jobs, all the people that are employed across a particular city or county or state and understanding, from a tax revenue perspective. So now we're bringing data and utilizing data from past revenue sources, for that state or for that jurisdiction, and how we can make predictions based on other government and economic factors of what the tax base is going to be. Here's where we're using that generative AI to understand what some of the tax bases or the revenue sources from that government are going to be. In the past, we've had to do that through multiple sources, but now we're able to provide the different data sources for this and ask it the right questions to be able to really more accurately predict revenue, more accurately predict job, income, and even gaps that we might have for different social programs. This is the kind of things that take weeks, months, and lots of hours to do from multiple sources when we're doing those things manually. Now we're able to really accelerate those utilizing AI.
I think what you're describing, is building towards this often talked about, rarely realized term in government, transformation, right? I'm taking my organization from this and I'm transforming it into this. It seems like with AI and some of its power, that some of these transformation initiatives, modernization journeys that agencies have talked about for a long time can actually potentially come to fruition here. How make that correlation for me? What does transformation mean for agencies in this context of AI?
Imagine someone is coming to the agency to say they need food assistance. Um, well, because all those food assistance, financial systems, employment services or assistance, all separate silos. And so from an agency perspective, now if Chris Dilley comes to an agency saying, I need food assistance, now we can look across the entire ecosystem and understand how to better serve that citizen because recognizing that they may be unemployed or recently unemployed, and that's going to feed from a job services perspective. They may have other circumstances that they need medical insurance or medical assistance. So now agencies are able to see a 360-degree view of that citizen and what their needs are today, and
Mhm.
based on history, based on trends, what their what their needs may be in the coming weeks or months, and then how do we mitigate those? How do we um, help head some of those things off now? And so now agencies are just able to make much more informed decisions again as they look at the 360-degree view of how we can serve those citizens, how we can possibly get them back to work, how we can align them with workforce development opportunities to get them back to work or to get them the child care that they need or whatever it is that's going to accelerate those things that's not going to spiral into even a more negative situation for them. That's the impact it's going to mean for agencies, which ultimately costs less to serve the citizen, which provides better transparency and ultimately, better for the community.
I love that example. And it's just such better care for the individual too, right? If you're going through a time of crisis, it you're probably not in the right headspace to be looking at different
Absolutely.
government agency websites and sourcing through it and knowing your rights and everything. So if there was information to be provided for you, it could be an overall better experience all around. So I want to shift our topic here just slightly because conversational AI is really a powerful use of the technology to help agencies make better decisions. Can you tell
Mhm.
me how? How does that work?
Oh, I have a great example of a law enforcement agency that is using conversational AI. Um, so this particular agency has had a high turnover of of police officers, police cadets, and so as they're bringing people through from a new employee or cadet perspective, they obviously don't know everything. And this particular department has a 470-page standard operating procedures manual that these officers, need to operate to. And so what we've done utilizing AI and utilizing conversational AI is they can actually in the from the patrol car, they can actually speak and tell them what the situation is. And in real time, it's giving them feedback of how they need to react to that. Let me give you an example. Um, so an officer pulls someone over, they walk up to the car, and the person takes off. The person goes back to the car and says high speed pursuit. And conversational AI responds to them, was there children present in the car? And if the answer is yes, they will say abort pursuit. They don't want to risk, they don't want to they don't want to risk the situation with a child in the car, whatever the situation is. It'll also look at where that officer is. Are they within a certain distance of a school zone? Are they, is it a time when, school is either coming or going because there's going to be more students, there's going to be more buses on the road. All those things are driving the conversation that officer is having based on the standard operating procedures that are outlined. They don't know all those things. And so, if there was a gun visible, if the answer is yes, that is actually going to trigger a workflow for additional resources to help respond to this situation. Did it appear as if it was a kidnapping or, other type of situation? So all those things that are conversational for this officer to have to keep the community safe,
Mhm.
keep the officers safe, and keep everyone involved. But it's followed within the policies and procedures that organization has put together.
It's such a specific example, but I think you can see how the use cases could be applied in so many different ways, whether you're in a hot pursuit or you're going through procurement language in the FAR and it's this long and you're like, I don't even know where I'm going from here. There are so many potential use cases
Yeah,
of
yeah. I can give you another use
Mhm.
case. Legislative documents and
Mhm.
laws and bills that so many legislative sessions are going through. Um, Imagine asking your conversational AI about a specific about a specific policy that you're looking to, request as a law or as a bill. And imagine conversationally, it comes back and tells you where existing conflicts exist in statute today. And so being able to look at those things, this is the kind of real-time interaction that has not been possible before and at the pace that AI has helped to be able to digest that information.
That's wonderful. Especially for those of us that can't speed read. I need the help. I need the help. So I want to kind of talk a little bit about the boundaries of AI. And by that, I mean it can't solve everything. So how can we make sure that the experience that a user, whether it's a government employee or a constituent, whatever the case is that they're having the same experience both in the digital world, maybe utilizing some of these tools and technologies, and in the real world? How do we make sure that they're having the same, maybe not exact experience, but kind of level of care?
No, that's a very good question, a very valid one. Because we don't want an answer to be different digitally than if I were to call Emily and ask her the same question. We don't want different conflicting. So again, going back to the consistency that we can drive with AI based on the sources of data, the policy that were written, and how we need to respond to some of these things. So again, and the other part of that is these language models are continually learning. So the answer that I get from a digital perspective and and then the path that that citizen may take from a digital perspective is going to validate or just discount that the answer that they may be given because they ask another question or go a different route. And so that all that is continuing to feed. All that's also going to feed to the resources, the services that Emily may use when Chris calls and asks her the same question in person. How does she look at the data that she has available and to be able to answer that same question? So consistency and experience is something that we need to continue to think about from an omni-channel perspective, whether it's call center, whether it's a digital experience, or whether it's an in-person experience. That's how people are going to be able to build trust in these processes. Because if they get a different answer one way than another way, they're going to take it a different place, and they're going to start using one channel versus another to whatever's most advantageous to them. So we need to continue to be consistent with how we present this information. And then also, as we think about customer experience, you know, many people, different generations of people are going to have a more digital experience where people from a different generation may want to have a more in-person experience. And so we need to be thinking about those things. So we need to be consistent, but we also then need to be able to provide a different type of experience for who's ever coming and whatever their situation is.
Yeah. My dad recently was available or qualified, my brain doesn't work obviously, to get Social Security benefits. And he's the guy that showed up to their offices in person and was like, "Hello, I'm here to sign up." And they were like, "Hello, we have a digital form for you. Here you go." And so he sat down with this lovely Social Security administrative woman who filled out the form for him because he's not digitally savvy. And he
Yeah.
had a tremendous experience. And I always like to shout that out because they provided such great customer experience and service for him. But to your point, it was the same experience because, well, they were using the digital form. He was just sitting there in person. But if he had to navigate that digitally by himself, it might not have gone as well as it did. So I love that example.
Absolute great example.
All right, two more quick questions for you here, Chris. So the first is you were talking about making sure you're having those same experiences, whether they're digital, in person, over the phone, however it transpires. I'm also curious about how AI can help maybe break down silos between different services that exist. If I'm over here applying for a fishing license and I also need a boating license, could I do it all at one time or something like that? How can AI help break down some of these barriers that exist for really real reasons sometimes in government between different service centers?
Yeah, your example of a fishing license is a great one. Uh, so imagine I do come to renew my fishing license, in the spring, and imagine using technology and understanding who Chris Dilley is and the profile of me as a citizen and the different other licenses and permits that I may have. Imagine if it also says, oh, your vehicle license is set to expire here in the next 30 days. Would you like to also pay that? Or, you know, some other, your driver's license, whatever it may be, being able to look across those service centers is a huge advantage. And being able to, again, trust that data and have that data available to drive that experience is going to be key. And you touched on it a little bit earlier, as from a need perspective, from a social assistance perspective, we don't want citizens to have to go to, one door for childcare, another door for child welfare or child support, or food assistance or financial assistance. So having that no wrong door approach, so no matter where they go, that they can have a consistent experience and be able to, you know, start wherever they need to start and then be still have the ability to get those other services that they may need, apply for those, get those and get the response or understand what they need is key to those service centers. But and then from a worker perspective,
Mhm.
being able to look across all those service centers as well to know when, Chris Dilley calls, that we can say, hey, we understand you've applied for these and all these different programs. And so in the various stages that they may exist within the confines of the benefits or eligibility determination. And again, that's driving a better experience. It's given full transparency to how we serve those citizens.
I love it. All right. So, we are in a time of great change. So it's my favorite question to ask, that people absolutely hate because no one likes to predict the future. But Chris, what do you expect to see evolve over the next year as it comes to government and AI? Where is this going? What do you expect to see?
Sure. I'm a technologist, so I love the technology, but I also am a realist to understand that we need to understand how it's going to make lives better. Um, and so over the next couple of years, I think you're going to continue to see, and I touched on it earlier, as we look at data sovereignty, the privacy requirements of a lot of this, to build those, fraud, waste, and abuse, identity theft are real things. And so as we look at how to better protect citizens, their data, and really identifying who they are so we can provide better service, I think you're going to see those things happening, underneath the covers. Those aren't the real popular things, but governments are going to get better at how do they utilize that data and how to protect that data. And what I think over the next couple of years, I think the connectivity between who you are and the services that you get is really going to become transparent. As far as again, how we provide better entitlements, how do we predict the services that you might need, and how to anticipate. I refer to it as anticipatory government. Um, knowing that your child is going to graduate from high school and that they may go on to the secondary education, anticipating many of those things to provide a better experience and to be able to make sure that they're successful in whatever it is they endure. I think you're going to see more and more of that being driven, you know, at the education level, at the social services level, at the higher education, and even in the workforce. I think you're going to see a lot of that, and it's pretty exciting.
I really hope that is accurate, because I love how you've predicted that. All right, Chris, final question for you. How does ServiceNow help?
ServiceNow is foundationally a workflow platform to get work done and to drive more efficiencies across whatever environment. And so being able to utilize data that exists within the platform or being able to utilize our data fabric to touch external data sources, it really is the control tower for getting stuff done, getting work done in government, getting work done from a citizen experience perspective or in your enterprise environment. And so ServiceNow has been doing this for years, and our platform is designed to do this and deliver. And I have no doubt we're going to continue to make a huge impact in government and across enterprises worldwide.
All right, thank you so much. I really appreciate you spending time with us today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Emily. Appreciate the discussion.